big love and gratitude and respects, acknowledging that I'm on the lands of the Wurundjeri, and in Brunswick there, Arik also is. The lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and paying also my respects to the close neighbours, the beautiful Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation, and just taking a moment to pay respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and also recognise the amazing fight for justice and Indigenous lives and social justice performed by those people on these lands. And I just want to share my love and gratitude for the grace of both the Bunurong and Wurundjeri mobs to hold that space. And pay my respects to the future generations and to all mob out there listening, to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island people out there listening, and to also all the Jewish mob out there listening, and then extend that welcome and that love and acknowledgement to all of our ancestors out there, and particularly people of colour out there. Big shout outs to you, mob, as we're going to be sort of getting into a bit of a yarn that covers a lot of our ancestors and lives today. So yeah, I'll hand over to my beautiful friend Arik to introduce himself. And yeah, my name's Allara. I'm a proud Yorta Yorta woman. My mum's on the chat, so hey mum. And yeah, that's me.
All right, thank you, Allara. And thank you for a beautiful acknowledgement. I just wanted to wish everyone Shabbat Shalom. It's Friday night, and I think that a lot of people during COVID, Shabbat has become a bit of a sort of weird one. We're not really seeing each other as much, and we gather every Friday to share a meal and talk about the week. So it's nice to be sharing a virtual meal with everyone at home and talking about the week with you, Allara, and with anyone that's watching. And I'm ready to go. I'm ready to get into it. I think we've got a lot to cover today.
Much.
Yeah. So we're gonna go. All right, you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Are you ready?
Right.
Audience, are you ready? Send us the love button if you're ready.
Yeah. Are you ready, everybody?
We love audience participation. Shabbat Shalom.
Love it. Exactly. All right. Yeah. So I guess a good time before we dive in is a little bit about how Allara and I met. I'll tell my side of the story, and then Allara, maybe you can either corroborate that and it's true. So basically, it was a Wednesday night, cold in Melbourne, and there was a show at the Gasometer. I went along, and Allara was one of the opening acts, and I saw her playing, and she was playing a double bass and looping, and doing this amazing poetry, and I was absolutely blown away by that set. I thought that's some of the most exciting music that I've seen in this city. And I just kind of remembered going, I'd really, really like to work with her one day. That would be an amazing, amazing thing. There was a couple of little incidents which, we still kind of encounter every time we get together. Allara had the stage at the Gasso is really low, and Allara was kind of struggling with how low the ceiling was, and from memory you bumped your double bass a few times.
Yeah, I kept bumping my double bass, because it's tall, and I'm tall, and my bass kept bumping on the roof, and it was so embarrassing. And it was only it must have only been my 4th or 5th gig live doing my solo project stuff. So I was like, oh, so shame, and it was just so awkward. But it was fun.
It was super fun. So that's when I first saw you play, and then we both found ourselves on a songwriting camp which was run by Multicultural Victoria, MAV, and And yeah, I mean, I'll set the tone because again, I'll probably end up rattling on and we'll be at 8:40. So I'll keep it short. But basically, it was a songwriters camp for, I guess, artists of color, and there were 2 recording stations set up. There was one on one side of the campsite and one on the other side of the campsite. And so my recollection was that I brought up all my gear, like way too much gear. I brought up literally everything I owned, and I was like, I'm going to be really useful. People are going to really enjoy, you know, using the studio. And I kind of said, look, you know, anyone that would kind of use it, just come hit me up. And it soon became apparent that no one wanted to record with me. And everyone was at the other studio. So it was a pretty open space until about 10 p.m. I think it was about 10 p.m. on the second night of the camp. Allara's like bounded up to me and going, I'm going to record my song. And I was like,
with that
okay,
face.
yeah,
I'm going to do it.
I want to record my song. And I was like, okay, let's do it. Do you drink coffee? And she's like, yes. I was like, would you share a massive plunger of coffee with me? And she was like, yes.
Yes.
And then basically we kicked off this first kind of recording session at 10 p.m. on a Saturday night. And then at 3 a.m. we wrapped. And that was more or less the basis of the recording for Walla Is Life. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah. And that's the Walla Is Life that everybody knows and loves.
Yeah.
So
Beautiful.
this beautiful man, Arik, is the producer of that song. And he's also the producer of a song that's going to come out in the next couple of months, Rekindled Systems as well. So yeah, get excited about that. But yeah, it was a great night, and it was a good start, really good start to a beautiful creative working relationship and also friendship.
Totally.
Yeah. So yeah, that's
right.
how we met.
How we met, and coffee has been a staple since then, and food. Amazing food.
Yeah.
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 All right.
And why we're here tonight, hey?
So tonight we're here to talk about I guess the story of William Cooper, who has a very, very close link with my community and your community. So perhaps we can kind of kick off by maybe sharing, maybe you want to go first about who William Cooper is, and then we can talk about that sort of section of how things kind of came together. Yep,
no worries. Well, William Cooper, or Uncle William Cooper, is an amazing, or passed now, but and is the grandfather of Uncle Boydie, and my connection with Uncle Boydie is that he's my mum's uncle, and was married to my grandfather's sister, Auntie Amy, and so yeah, that's my family connection with Uncle Boydie, and of course then Uncle William Cooper is Uncle Boydie's grandfather. And Uncle William was an incredible Aboriginal activist, and he founded the Australian Aborigines League, and travelled all around Australia, talking with mob all across the country to get better rights, and discussing all sorts of things about how to and what we wanted as Aboriginal people in between the 1920s and the 1940s. And he was a really, really prominent person. For example, he, in 1938, on the 26th of January, started on the 150th anniversary of colonisation, when all the white Australian people were celebrating the colonisation of Australia. He started the first protest for a day of mourning. And so that's where our survival day and invasion day, I guess, started, with him leading that protest in Sydney. And so he's a really important person, and 1938 was a really big year for him and for Yorta Yorta people. He'd left Cumragunda Mission by then, so he was born at Cumra or Maloga on Yorta Yorta Waka, and then travelled all across Melbourne and then the rest of the country. And so he was a very important person, and he was the first and only known private protest against the atrocities of Kristallnacht and the Holocaust from the German Nazis towards the Jewish people in Germany and across Europe. And so he was really the first person in the world to be saying, hey, why are you genociding these people? And I think there's a really clear and obvious connection there, is that he was experiencing genocide himself and seeing his own people, you know, put in missions and being forced to follow the rules and that of somebody who had power over them, which was the missionaries. And so he was a very amazing man, and he was a religious man as well, Christian, and that's what they were taught at the school on the mission. And so he had a lot of compassion, and he had a lot of empathy, and was a really really beautiful person. And I wish that I'd had the chance to meet him, but I think, yeah, knowing Uncle Boydie, I feel very lucky to be able to know Uncle Boydie. And so that's I guess my connection, and a little bit of the history of what he did. And yeah, he was known for his letter writing and his petitions. He wrote a big petition to King George V, and I think it's King George, is it?
I think so.
Yeah, there's a lot of information to remember, but yeah, he wrote this big petition saying we want an Aboriginal voice in Parliament because we want control over our own destinies. And this is in like the 1930s. This is almost 100 years ago that this was happening, and we're still fighting for that voice in Parliament today. So he was far before his time, or maybe we're later than our time, but I don't know, depends on which way you look at it. What do you think, Arik?
Yeah, well, I'm very new to this story. I first heard of William Cooper probably a year and a half ago through a dear friend of mine, old friend Sarah Gorey, who I think's been on this call. Yep.
Hi, Sarah.
And has also been an incredible resource for both Allara and I in really understanding kind of this story and its links to the Jewish community in Melbourne in particular. I guess while I'm kind of acknowledging some people that have kind of guided us with our own knowledge, it would not be right to, I guess, continue talking without acknowledging the amazing work of Abraham Schwartz, or Abe Schwartz, who Allara has a really, I guess, a bit of a longer relationship with Abe, and who I met last night, and 4 hours later was still going with him. And we can talk a little bit about that a bit later. I'm conscious of
and
time,
Kim, who's just jumped on as well. I've been watching videos about you. And acknowledge, you know, he's your great uncle as well there, Kim. So thanks for jumping on and for your input in the research and everything like that. It's been great to see what you've helped put together and the support you've given as well.
So I think what we're going to do is Allara and I are going to talk about our kind of understanding of the story, and perhaps maybe at the end of the chat or next week, we might link up some resources for people to do some further reading, because you know, something that's pretty hard to cover in such a short amount of time. So I guess I'm going to tell the story of William Cooper from a Jewish perspective, and then we're going to kind of look at today. Sound good? So from the Jewish perspective, Kristallnacht happens, the Jews of Germany are more or less, it's a pogrom. They're violently accosted, businesses are destroyed, and it more or less rings the alarm and says the shit's going to go down and it's going to be bad. It was really it's kind of, I guess, unanimously seen as that moment where, like, the worst horrors that were to take place from 1938 through to 1945, that was the starting gun. In 1938, not very long after Kristallnacht, William Cooper wrote a letter. And I think it's important to acknowledge it wasn't just William Cooper that was involved. It was actually the Aboriginal Justice League. So there were more people involved.
The Australian Aboriginals League.
Australian Aboriginals League. And William Cooper
was one. Aborigines then, yeah.
Aborigines League. And William Cooper was one of the important people within that. And it's his story.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
One of the founders of it. Yeah, one of the founders.
So William Cooper, along with the Australian Aborigines League, drafted a letter condemning the actions of the German government against the Jewish people, and he marched with his group from Footscray to Collins Street in the city where the German embassy was, to deliver this letter, and was denied entry. And we were talking about this last night, actually. It's like, they were Nazis, basically. They were, the
essentially,
the people at the embassy were the Nazis, and they turned him away.
And the idealism of them, like, was equal to what the Australian, like the white Australian policies and the white Australian society was feeling, and how they were acting at that time, was that it was better to be white, that you were superior if you were white, and that you were subhuman if you were Aboriginal. And clearly that's how the Germans were feeling, the Nazi people were feeling about Jewish people. That's right.
And I guess when we start looking at the parallels, they're alarming. I guess it's called social Darwinism, which gave birth to the eugenics movement, was something that both the Jews of Europe and around the world were victims of, in the same way that the Indigenous people were victims of that in Australia. From my understanding, if you go to the museum in Berlin, Sarah could probably verify this more. So she told us this yesterday, but basically the Jews and the Indigenous people were in the same line around eugenics, and
so there's like the triangle of it. Hey, so there's like the Aryan, or like the white people at the top, and then down there at the bottom is like Jewish people and Aboriginal people. So that's what we start to see, that link. And when you think about the story of William Cooper and the Aboriginal Advancement League, it's really kind of inspiring, and it really opens up some incredibly critical questions that we really need to look at and interrogate in 2020. And I guess now's probably a good time to sort of start to move towards today. And I think there's no way of doing that better than looking at these two particular quotes. And it's pretty heavy. So yeah, and also shout outs there to Uncle Gary Foley, who we've been reading some of his work as well, for some insight. And yeah, some of what we've going to talk about is in relation to what he's written too. Hey,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go through a bit of history. We're going to go to some history from 1938. We're going to go through some history of 2020. So the Evian Conference was convened July 6 to July 15 in 1938 in France to address the problem of the German and Austrian Jews fleeing Nazi Germany. The Australian government's then Minister for Trade and Customs, Lieutenant Colonel Thomas W. White, declared Australia's position. It will, and this is a quote, "It will no doubt be appreciated also that as we have no real racial problem, we are not desirous of importing one." This is in 1938. The Trade Minister has basically declared, we do not have a problem with racism in Australia in 1938. On June 2nd, 2020, that's, what is that, 6 weeks ago?
Mm-hmm.
The Prime Minister of this country, Scott Morrison, quote, "There's no need to import problems from other countries to the country, the wonderful country we live in. I mean, Australia is a fair country."
Fair country.
Fair country. So when we look at that, the concept of this idea of importing racist ideas into this country that was denied in 1938 and then once again denied in 2020 by the Prime Minister of this country, it really kind of, it personally makes my blood boil, and it really kind of, from a personal point of view, makes me want to tell and retell the story of William Cooper. In the tradition of, in Jewish tradition, we sit and have Passover every year. Passover is a meal where we tell the story of the Jews leaving Egypt. And in part of our culture is to tell and retell the story. And we tell and we retell and we retell and we put ourselves in the position as though we were once slaves in Egypt. And my personal opinion is that this kind of telling and retelling of a story is, we as Jewish people need to really start to tell and retell and retell and retell the story of William Cooper, so we remind ourselves that we were once victims of this horrible, horrible racism, and that we need to remind ourselves that this is going on today, and it's going on right here in our own backyard. What are your thoughts, Allara?
Yeah, it's true, and it's like, you know, it's part of why I'm so passionate, and what keeps me going every day is remembering the legacy that our elders and our old people and our ancestors, of their work, that they worked so hard so that my generation and future generations can have some kind of good life and have equal opportunities and be able to live our lives and do what we want to do under some kind of freedom. Like, that's what keeps me going, and that's what, you know, even today there's still so much pain and suffering and inequality and injustice that's being perpetrated and oppressed to our people, that I know that I have to do my part in looking after or like trying to get rid of that racism and trying to help our next generations be able to succeed in ways that would have been easier for me and people of my generation to do. And yeah, so big love to our ancestors in our mob who did that, you know, even 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 years ago, because they've paved the foundations of our activism today. And so totally. It's through remembering those stories and reflecting on them, and that's part of our songlines, you know, that's part of singing and listening and dancing. That's how we remember our stories, and so that's part of why doing art is so important for me, and singing, and you know, that's how we share the stories with the next generations as part of our culture. So but this story of leaving Egypt, this is a big pinpoint of the connection that I've noticed, particularly between the Jewish and the Yorta Yorta stories. And so there's the story of Moses. So do you want to tell that story, or do you want me to talk a bit? I think you should talk on that.
Okay.
Neither of us want to talk about it because we're like, we don't know it well enough.
Okay. Look, basically, just as a bit of background, yesterday, Allara and I, we started a Zoom call at 3:30, finished at 7:30. And during that time, like, all right, history of the Jews, go. So we talked about Moses, we talked about, you know, the temple and all these kinds of things. But basically, I think, well, yeah, I mean, I'll tell the story from the, you know, like the abridged version, and then perhaps you can just kind of talk about how that story sort of got, I guess, embraced by Yorta.
How it came to Maloga.
Yeah, let's do that. So Moses, little boy, found floating on the River Nile, a thing that we actually found out yesterday, which was like, wow, that's interesting. That the Jewish people in Egypt at the time were considered custodians of the river, and me and Allara kind of had like a little, wow, that's an amazing kind of moment, you know, given this chat.
While there is life. Sorry.
While there is life. So Moses gets found floating down the river. Basically, Pharaoh had put an edict out for all of the firstborn Jewish boys to be drowned because he feared that they would one day rise and overthrow him. Moses is saved by his sister Miriam putting him on the water. Moses is then adopted by Pharaoh's daughter, grows up as part of the royal family, does that whole thing, then sees an Egyptian slave master beating down on a Jewish slave, and kills this master, and then runs away in fear of his life, becomes a shepherd, walks around the desert, finds a burning bush. The burning bush has no smoke. He talks to the burning bush. The burning bush says, you know, you need to go and liberate the people of Israel, the Jewish people. He then goes back, and the condensed version is he asks Pharaoh to let his people go. Pharaoh says no. A whole bunch of plagues happen, 10 plagues, and then the Jews leave Egypt, and they get to the Red Sea. Moses, the Egyptians are in hot pursuit, and Moses parts the Red Sea. The Jews run through the Red Sea, and then there's a whole other story, 40 years of wandering through the desert, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. That's about where we got to?
I think you got all the points. Yeah. So this is the part of the Jewish beliefs and part of also the Christian Bible, right?
Yeah. So yeah.
First it covers. Yeah. And I'm still getting my head around all of that. Like, it's pretty complicated, and it's like, it's all connected. And some of it is a bit confusing to me because I didn't grow up, you know, Christian or anything like that. So some of it's like quite new to me. So I'm still open to hearing and learning a lot. And I'm learning a lot every day. So apologies if I do say some wrong things. I will try and fix that.
My sister's a group studies teacher, so you can come about anytime. And she'll say great.
Yeah. So what was happening then sometime later in America is obviously African people were being taken from their homes in Africa, all throughout Africa, and taken to America and being forced to be slaves, right? So this is happening during the 16th century. That's right? I don't know. My dates are a bit messed up. Anyway, so there's African American people, and then by the time of emancipation, there is a group of singers, and they start singing all these different hymns. And there's a group that started the University of, what's the university?
We'll have to get Abe in on the call.
I have to check it. We need Abe. So this mob of African Americans are starting the first all black university in America, which was really exciting. And so they were raising money to start this university because they wanted to be educated, they wanted to be self-sufficient, all of that. And so what they did, and they were gospel singers, so they'd also experienced the church life, and they traveled the world to raise money for their university. And they got to Australia, and one of the mission managers of the Maloga mission, which is where my family come from, so the mission manager heard about these singers, the spirituals, and he went to Brighton to see them perform, and he thought they were so amazing that he tried to convince them to come to Maloga mission and sing for the mob down on the mission there. And they were like, oh yeah, all right then, okay. So the Fisk Jubilee singers, they came and they sang to the Yorta Yorta mob at the mission, at Maloga mission, which then later became Kamargunja mission, and moved slightly in the location. But it was the same people. They all moved from one place to the next. And one of those songs that they sang was called Turn Back Pharaoh's Army. And it's this story of Moses and him leading the Jewish people out of slavery, out of Egypt, and to freedom. And the song itself talks about him, Moses, smiting the water. So he smites the water with his big staff, and the ocean, like the Red Sea, opens up, and they walk through and they drown all Pharaoh's army. And that's essentially what the song Narabura Pharaoh is like. It's translated directly from that hymn, Turn Back Pharaoh's Army. And so what that song is still, as it's still sung today, is a protest song. You know, it's a song of freedom. It's a song that the people want to go home to somewhere where it's safe, where they are free and not under slavery. So there was something about the way those people, the Fisk Jubilee singers, these African-American people, sang these hymns, and, you know, they sung it in a gospel style, and it was really fun. And we've heard stories from Abe, you know, saying that, and passed down from stories. So let me acknowledge, so I need to acknowledge Auntie Geraldine Briggs, and I need to acknowledge her grandmother as well, Nanny Teresa Clements, and, you know, all their ancestors. If you've got, you know, family members out there, and they're, you know, part of my family as well, big shout outs to you, mob. So these are the people that heard this song sung by the Fisk Jubilee singers, and it touched them. And the singers themselves were so touched by how touched the Yorta Yorta people were. They had this really amazing connection because they knew it. Because some of these singers in the choir were emancipated slaves. You know, they were people who had experienced oppression and being under somebody's rule and not having freedom. And so they connected so much with the Yorta Yorta people, because the Yorta Yorta people felt the same way. And then, and this is they came out to Maloga in 1885 or 1886. And so it was on, like, straight after they left, they were so connected and felt so amazing to have met each other, that the choir left them a songbook of their songs. And there was a beautiful school teacher, Mauritian Indian scholar, Thomas Shadrach Jones. So shout out to you, mob, and the family. And so he helped with the translation with Nanny Teresa Clements, who they then translated all orally as well. They translated the hymn of Turn Back Pharaoh's Army into Yorta Yorta, and that is what has become Narabura Pharaoh. And so it's a beautiful connection between this freedom and how far this song has traveled, and how far the story has traveled from Egypt to America and to Australia, and of course it's continued to travel. Hey Kim, yes. So we've got some pretty special people watching. Thomas Shadrach James is beautiful Kimberly Moulton's great grandfather. So yeah, we love you, Kim. You're amazing.
Allara, I'm going to ask you a question, because this So the story of how a song that started in Hebrew and then got translated into English and then got translated into multiple language and then got translated into Yorta it's an incredible story, and it creates just an additional link of the story of the Jewish people and the story of the Yorta Yorta mob. But this got personal yesterday, and this
got so personal.
This, and I know my sister's watching, and Sean, I found this out yesterday, and this is nuts. All right, so Allara, quickly tell me, Lois Briggs, tell me,
Auntie Lois.
Auntie Lois, she was involved in this translation in some capacity. Is that right?
Auntie Lois is another Briggs, and she's like one of my aunties, a cousin of my grandfather, and the granddaughter of Nanny Teresa. No, is that right? Nanny Teresa. Yeah.
Who was the person that translated this, right?
Auntie Lois Pilar. Yeah.
Okay.
Her grandmother.
Amazing. So
I think that's right. I think that's right.
Yep. I think so. I think that's where we landed. So,
yeah.
Allara,
and there's a big lot of them. There's heaps of siblings. Heaps of siblings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Jess. There's an old school friend. Hey, Ange. All right. So, Auntie Lois' great-granddaughter is what someone's saying.
Yeah, there we go. And thank you, Auntie Damien. There. Look. Thank you, Auntie Damien.
Okay, so get this for a story. I have an auntie. So my uncle, Auntie Barbara. So she basically born Barbara Hayat and now Barbara Erez. So my Auntie Barbara grew up in Shepparton on the property of Miriam and Frida and Morris Silverstein, next door to Lois Briggs. And Barbara had told me a few times about, I basically, years and years ago, I'd volunteered and done some work at Rumballara, and I'd told my family that I was, working with Paul Briggs, and she said, "Oh, I wonder if he's related to Lois." And I was like, I don't know if he's related to Lois. I was very new to the space. But Barbara, my auntie, said, "Oh, I grew up next door to Lois Briggs." And this is crazy, right? So after we're talking all about this Nora Farah song, which we're going to get to in a minute, but this is an amazing story. My family grew up next door to Lara's family, basically. We've kind of talked about this potential link throughout, and then we got there yesterday, and more to the point, Lois, from what I've been told, was is I guess the descendant of the people that translated this song, and Lois herself was an amazing singer, and Barbara
still is. She's still a beautiful singer.
Still is.
Auntie Lois.
She
was a sapphire.
She's a sapphire. Lois Briggs is a sapphire. And yes, there's a lot of people saying, wow. And so how's this? I'm having a chat yesterday with Abe Schwartz, who is the guy and the authority on I guess, this kind of Jewish connection to this story. And I'm talking to him, and in very kind of Jewish sort of, get him on the phone kind of behavior. He's like, get Barbara on the phone. Get Barbara on the phone. So I was like, okay, I'll get Barbara on the phone. So I called Barbara. I'm like, Barbara, there's this guy, Abe Schwartz, on the line, and he's going to like drop a whole lot of truth. and then I was with a phone kind of at my computer as Abe went and basically told us about this kind of connection that all leads back to this song and this story of William Cooper and the solidarity of the Yorta Yorta mob with the Jewish people. And it's incredibly moving.
And there's more.
And there's more. And there'll be more. And we're not authorities, and I'm sure anyone wants to know, call Abe, he's the guy.
No, but there's more right now.
Oh, yeah, there is more right now. Do you want me to continue about something?
Yeah. Well, no, you finish your story about your auntie.
Okay. So the story is, so I get this message from Abe last night, and he's like, how's this? He goes, so Barb's kind of taken back by this. I know, Chog's saying crazy connections. I know, right? He says, I sent, oh no, here we go. Let's find it. Okay, here we go. So Barb, my auntie, was like, I remember growing up next to Lois and about six other children, and we used to ride our bikes together. That was the big thing that she'd remembered. So Abe, being this amazing historian's like, I'm going to call Lois right now. And he just calls Lois, right? This is after our phone call. And,
oh my gosh.
And I get this message from him, and he says, just talking to 76-year-old Auntie Lois. Sorry, I should, is it okay if I've
I don't know. I don't know if that's okay.
I've said her age.
But it's done now.
It's done. Sorry, it's on Instagram.
You did it.
Right? I did it. I just talking to Auntie Lois now. Yes, she lived on the property of the farm and totally remembers Miriam Frieda and Moshe Friedman. And she remembers two more things clearly. So, and this is it: cycling together and eating gefilte fish. And
it's amazing.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And Abe has basically arranged a phone call between my auntie and Auntie Lois Briggs, and that's going to happen in the next few weeks. So thank you, Abe. And me and Allara, just our heads kind of exploded, going, "Oh my God, there it is. We knew it was there, and there it is." So we've rattled on a bit.
We have, but it's good.
We've got a lot. Yeah, thanks, Sarah. We've got so much more to get through. So if you guys want to hang with us.
It's chill, right?
It's chill. I think it's chill. Oh, is it chill?
Yeah.
Can someone let us know?
It's chill.
Chill.
It's chill.
Right, it's chill. We're just going to keep on going.
Okay, let's do it.
We're going to keep on going.
So,
okay.
Should we chat more on the song now?
Let's get to the song.
Okay. So should I sing it or talk about it?
Whatever you want.
Or talk about it then sing it.
You do what you do. You.
Okay. All right. I'll sing it and then I'll talk about it.
Whatever you want.
Okay. And there's also another crazy connection about this beautiful song is that my grandfather's mum, my great grandmother, Nanny Sophie Briggs, she was in the Cummeragunja choir and they used to sing and so they were then singing some of these songs, like they sung this song Brewer Pharaoh or Turn Back Pharaoh's Army after the Fisk Jubilee Singers came out. And I've heard about there being recordings of it, and I was like, oh, I'd love to hear one of these recordings. And it's my great grandmother, and I thought I never obviously never got to meet my great grandmother. And I've just heard so many amazing stories about her. Like she was an incredible fisherwoman, fisherman. She was the best at catching fish. She was, had a really big like belly laugh. And was just a beautiful, beautiful woman. And so about 6 months ago, I reached out to IATSIS, which is, what does IATSIS stand for? I always forget. It's like the Australian Institute of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Studies, and they keep a lot of records there, like recordings, photographs, video footage, and this and that, like old stuff. And so I reached out to them about 6 months ago, and I said to them, oh, like I'd really like to. I found that my Nanny Sophie's Briggs, like I saw her name written in some of their archives, and so I requested to get access to it. And today was the day they sent it back to me. So I went through the process, and I have waited all this time, and it just so happens that today is the first day ever that I got to hear my Nanny Sophie sing Narrabri Pharaoh. And I can't share it on here, obviously, because there's privacy and all of that. I have to go through the proper protocols and stuff. But yeah, like it's mind-blowing to hear the voice of my great-grandmother, and to know that I'm still singing that song today. And you know, there's little bits that sound a bit different. Some of the phrasing is different, so I might check in with some people about, you know, should I be changing, making the way I sing it sound more like the way she sings it. But that's going to take a little bit of time, so I'll just sing it how I usually sing it, and then next time it might sound a bit different. Ready? So this is Narrabri Pharaoh.
Ready, let's go.
Wamraka Moses yen yen wala wala yepuna yepuch Narrabri Pharaoh yumanayala Narrabri Pharaoh yumanayala Narrabri Pharaoh yumanayala yala Narrabri Pharaoh yumanay Bura Pharaoh yumanay Bura Pharaoh yumanayala yala Yenduk peku jesu Brawu bukana yumanay Narrabri Pharaoh yumanayala Narrabri Pharaoh yumanayala yala Narrabri Pharaoh yumanayala yala Narrabri Pharaoh yumanay Bura Pharaoh yumanay Bura Pharaoh yumanayala yala. So yeah, that's the song. Thank you. Yeah, so that's the song, and so there's more to it. There's more to this song, and some of what I want to talk about is the connection that I think that there is between what came to be the walk-off, the Kamargunja walk-off in 1939, in early February 1939, and I think that it's, and this is just, you know, this isn't written or anything anywhere. Actually, there is a beautiful Abe Shorts has written some articles and big thesis on this, but I think that through all those years of singing this song, you know, smite the water, go through the water, go to freedom, inspired the Kamargunja walk-off. I don't know if that really is true, but that's a theory, and I have in my heart that you know, they didn't sing that for no reason. You know, why did they like that song so much? You know, it was about when the Fisk Jubilee singers sung that. You know, they were people wanting to be free. They were black people that wanted to be free, right? And I think that the Yorta Yorta people heard that and were so inspired by that. They also used it as a way, you know, that we weren't really supposed to speak our languages on those missions. And so by translating that into Yorta Yorta, that was a way, and singing it as a hymn and being, you know, doing the like Christian thing, I think that was a really clever way. And whether they meant it in like a sneaky way, or whether they just, you know, really believed that, you know, really believed in God and stuff, that I'm not sure. But either way, I think that song contributed to the idea to walk off the mission. And the Yorta Yorta people of Kamargunja were the first, it was one of the first mass protests in the whole of Australia. They were the first people, Aboriginal people, to stand up and leave. And that was, you know, led by the Yorta Yorta people. It was led by Uncle William Cooper. It was led by Uncle Jack Patton. It was led by some of the beautiful women. I need to be better at remembering everybody's names because I don't want to leave anybody out. But I acknowledge that I'm still like learning everything and trying to lock it all into my memory. But there was women, and there was, you know, it was a whole community effort, and there was a lot of organization, sneaky organization happening on that mission. So yeah, big shout outs to the Yorta Yorta fam, and I love yous. And so yeah, any thoughts on that, Arik?
Look, there's a lot. There's a lot. It's an amazing story, and I think what's a really important kind of bow to draw is that, and this is another thing that we learned was, that song, a song of resistance, a song of freedom, a song that, started in Hebrew and ended up in Yorta Yorta, to not only kind of support the liberation of the Yorta Yorta people, but to stand in solidarity with the Jewish people in their time of need. It's an incredible link, and I think now is probably a good time to sort of pivot towards 2020 and really start to focus on some of the more serious stuff. Now, Allara, you might have a better kind of read on this, and we're going to get real here, but since the Black Lives Matter protest that took place in Melbourne, not too long ago, my understanding is we've had two more deaths in custody since then. Am I right with that number?
I would need to check, but organisations like War, the Warriors of the Aboriginal Resistance, and there's other groups on Facebook and Instagram that would definitely have the right numbers. I've been so anxious of late, and so I've been trying to shelter myself a little bit from what's going on. It's very difficult. Sure. I have to completely avoid social media to do that. But yeah, it's been a couple, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, from my understanding, it's been at least two Indigenous people have died at the hands of police since George Floyd. We have a problem here. We're not importing a problem. The problem has been here for over 200 years, and there's no real end in sight to that problem unless people start to really make some noise. And I feel, from a point of view of the solidarity that William Cooper and his mob kind of gave towards my people, it's incumbent on my people to kind of make just as much noise for the freedom and the safety of your mob. You know what I mean? I think there's something we are linked, and we had, of all the people around the world, we had the support of the Yorta Yorta people in our darkest hour, and that level of support we need to be returning. I've learned a lot in the last few weeks about different amazing Jewish organizations that are operating in this space. But there's also been, from my position and my understanding, a bit of a lack from my own kind of lens around bold statements in relation to standing in deep solidarity with Indigenous people in this country, specifically in light of the Black Lives Matter moment, and specifically in light of Indigenous deaths in custody. I think it's really important to note that we have a Prime Minister that uses the same language as Colonel White, and says things like importing a racist problem,
and saying that we've got no slavery here. And that we had no slavery here.
And saying that we have no slavery here, and we have people from our community. That's right. My sister's saying, "Who is the William Cooper for First Nations today?" That's right, from our community, and that's a really strong question. Who is going to take that role from the Jewish community to really kind of put themselves on the line and make that stand for Indigenous people today. Thank you, Sean. Love you, Sean. And I think we need to call it. We need to call it. We have right now, we have a Jewish treasurer, and we have a Prime Minister that still uses the same language as Colonel White used against the Jews, using that same language against black
Literally
Jews.
The same. I was like, I could not believe when I read that. I was like, wow, do we have the same prime minister from like
Right.
100 years ago?
So you know, when you can kind of contextualize that, you know, it's really an important kind of moment. I think you know, in the same way that one should not kind of broadly assume anything about any community, I will speak from my own kind of perspective and say that the Jewish people in this country, for the most part, right now, we are safe. You know, we've more or less safety that we didn't have 100 years ago, and we have privilege, and we have influence, and I guess the question is, how do we use that privilege and how do we use that influence to further the cause of First Nations people in a time where so much has been denied, and we're still kind of talking about the same shit that's been going on for hundreds of years. So I think, I mean, I could probably go on about this all night.
We could.
We've got 40 seconds to go. We've got 40 seconds to go. I think Instagram Live's about to cut us off. I reckon let's go again.
If it does, will you mob come back? I know that we'll come back.
We'll come back. I'm just gonna reboot it. I'm gonna start.
Yeah. All right.
So we're gonna leave, and then we're gonna come back in after a short commercial break. Why don't you go charge your glasses with some Schlivovitz, and we'll get down to business. We've got 10 to go, and we're gonna go again in about, yes, thank you, Sean. We're gonna go again in a minute. We'll be back in a minute. Hey, welcome back.
Thanks for sticking around, everyone.
Thanks for sticking around. This has gone a little bit longer than we anticipated, but
we should have expected it.
That's right.
We should have.
That's right, exactly. So let's just wait for people to join. Okay, we are talking about, I guess, what's happened in the last few months. We've got COVID. We've got, I guess, racial tensions in the US that have basically reminded some people in this country about the racial tensions that exist here, but these racial tensions have been here and haven't gone anywhere, and there's nothing new. And it's really, really important that we acknowledge that and really start to kind of investigate. And I'm talking about this from a kind of Jewish community point of view. You know, how we can be the William Coopers, like my sister said. How can we be the William Coopers for the Indigenous people in this country, and what kind of things can we do to, I guess, fight for the rights of the original and traditional custodians of this land? What do you reckon?
And it's a question,
Lara?
right?
It's a question.
Well,
I mean,
it's a good question. It's a question that, you know, like you've asked me before, and I just prefer to throw the question right back. You know, there's no one size fits all when it comes to what to do in terms of activism or in terms of showing solidarity with Indigenous communities or with people of colour. That there's no one size fits all, but the root of it starts, like I honestly think, starts with acknowledging where you come from, you know, what's your level of privilege, and then what you decide to do with your time, right? So, like, for example, you feel like you've said to me like how inspired you are by Uncle William and his stance against the Nazi Germany and what was happening to Jewish people, and that how amazing it was to have somebody who it was likely had never even met a Jewish person, was standing up for the rights of a people across the world.
Yeah.
And lots of people are saying, but why? But why would he do that? And it was like, we don't really know that there's like evidence that suggests it's because he understood the feeling of marginalization, and he understood what it felt like to be considered less human or like less of because of his identity.
Yeah.
And it makes complete sense to me that he would be seeing that. Like, he saw it in the Argus. On what date? Let's drop a date. I really took some notes, but I didn't take very good notes. I haven't been able to get any notes from my notes.
The Argus newspaper, right?
Yeah. So he saw it. He saw Kristallnacht in the newspaper, and he was like, this is messed up. How this, like, people were just getting murdered and, you know, being oppressed because of what they believe and who they are. And he was like, but why? That's stupid. So yeah. I asked you the question, you know, like, what do you do? It's not up to one person to say everybody needs to do this and then we can all live happily ever after. It's like, well, what do? You know, you support me, you know, you're always giving me advice and support when it comes to like my music stuff, and that's something that, you know, part of our relationship that we have. And for example, you've gone out and you've been volunteering down at the flats in Richmond and Collingwood, right?
Yeah, Flemington and North Melbourne.
Flemington and North Melbourne. So it's not just solidarity that I think needs to be shown between the Jewish community and the Indigenous communities. I think it's like, it's all marginalized people, whether it's people with disabilities, whether it's people who identify as queer, like LGBTIQ. It's all of those people, because it's under the same ideals of what we were talking about before, of social Darwinism, or you could say that, like, you know, the white supremacy that has oppressed all of us. And so we have to work together. And yeah, you know, there's a beautiful, amazing poem by Audrey, Lorde, and it's about, there's no hierarchy of oppression. And she, like, if you haven't heard it, look it up. And what she talks about is that, like, the issues are all connected and they all stem from the same issue, which is like white male supremacy, like the patriarchy and this and that. And so what I see needing to happen is that we all have to stand in solidarity with each other and work together better. And it's not just like Jewish and Indigenous people, like I see that as like our mob, like First Nations mob, you know, supporting people of colour in the flats and all across Australia. Like, while Indigenous people are still being oppressed here in this country, any person who is marginalised in this country is going to be suffering. Because that's what it stems from there. That's how this country was built. So I ask you, what are the actions that you take personally? Because everybody sits, like, all the different people sit in different levels of privilege. And like, as an artist, you don't necessarily have as much privilege as somebody who I saw actually before, who was listening. I'm not sure if he's still on, but Peter Seidel, you know, and the beautiful work of Arnold Bloch and Liebler law firm, and, you know, Jewish law firms who support, like, they supported the Yorta Yorta people during the native title claim with legal support. And so it's like looking at where you sit and what your privilege is, and then looking at how you can contribute to deconstructing the racist systems that continue to cause grief, harm and trauma to not just First Nations people, but all people of colour and all people who, you know, maybe have a disability or are looked down at if they have, you know, if they're gender queer, or if they identify as LGBTIQ, you know. So it's like all these communities, we've got to work together. Yeah,
I totally agree. And I think, you know, I'm just so grateful for you kind of reminding myself and reminding, you know, some of the Jewish people at home as well of the fact that we are part of that same narrative. And there are times in a kind of Jewish context that we've been sort of the wandering Jew. We move through countries, we do what we can to survive and blend in, but we're still Jewish, and that's never going to go away. And I think, you know, I'm just really grateful for you to have kind of, I guess, you know, called in an incredibly inviting sense this broader Jewish community of people that are watching at home to kind of join that conversation and join that narrative. You know, from a point of view of like action today, I think, you know, activism, there's so many lanes, and you know, I guess personally I'm guilty of sort of having this my own narrow lane and not necessarily appreciating the other lanes that are going on side by side. I guess I can only talk from my own perspective and perhaps look at some of the things that people like myself, who are not necessarily lawyers and who are not, you know, people that can petition the government, what can I do personally? So from point of view of me, I think about music as a platform of activism. You know, more and more I'm kind of attracted to and you know, drawn to music that says something that challenges the things that we're both kind of discussing that need to be broken down.
Yeah, and part of that, Arik, just sorry to stop you, I just got a thing, like, you know, part of the continuation of practicing specifically for First Nations people, part of our, I wouldn't even call it activism, but I'll call it cultural survival, you know, it's cultural thriving, is that we continue to sing and we continue to dance and we continue to tell our stories and remember who we are and continue to be who we are. And that's, you know, that's part of retelling those stories at Passover. That's, and reflecting on, you know, where you sit in the world and how to make the world a better place. Yeah,
totally. And I mean, I think, I mean, just as a little side point, which both the two of us learnt yesterday, which was another interesting link, and looking at the concept of songline, the concept of a story getting passed down orally, and then thinking about, you know, things that hold historical weight in the kind of colonial mind, to kind of frame it up in relation to kind of reporting on the Holocaust and reporting on the atrocities of Nazi Germany. And this is, again, thank you, Abe Schwartz, for your amazing wisdom. When you go to Yad Vashem, which is the Holocaust Museum in Israel, in Jerusalem, basically the way a testimony is verified in relation to what happened in the Holocaust is if one other person saw it. So it's fundamentally an oral tradition. It needs nothing. It needs no additional record. It needs no documentation. If someone saw it and can corroborate that happened, then that goes on the public record and becomes a story that we can tell in relation to the Holocaust. And what Abe had taught us last night was that kind of oral tradition and how that kind of links up with, you know, your mob and how stories get passed down. And I think when we start to really kind of unpack those kind of concepts of what works in the colonial structure and what works in a cultural structure, you start to, again, realize just how deeply linked these older traditions are from the incredibly restrictive and oppressive mindset of, you know, colonial Western law. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just want to put that one in there, but I might get
yeah.
Because as we said, we could go on all night. We have 28 eyes on us, so it's amazing that you guys have stuck with us. But we might just get down to a couple of kind of key takeaways. Is that cool with you, Allara?
Yeah, go for it.
So, I mean, you know, beyond the kind of the deaths in custody, which is just fucked, another thing that we saw happen literally this year is a 46,000-year-old cave got exploded by Rio Tinto. And I mean, when you think about the context of that happening, that's literally like someone blowing up the Western Wall. This is, from a Jewish perspective, we're talking about sacred sites and links to tradition. And to think that in 2020, we have a company and a government that allows the destruction of a 46,000-year-old cultural sacred site it's like, I can't believe this happened. You know what I mean?
I know. It's like, but how? Like
right?
But you know what's crazy is that I've been looking into the Uluru Statement from the Heart. And, you know, part of the Statement from the Heart is that the mob are kind of saying, you know, that we should have an Indigenous voice in Parliament. And what's messed up is that the Prime Minister of the time said, well, no, we don't want that because, like, Australians aren't going to want that. Yeah, dude, because, like, you've still got a system that creates racists. No offense to the racists. Yeah. But this is the truth.
They should wear it.
And something that I saw that was crazy is that Rio Tinto were like, yes, we agree with Statement from the Heart. And it's like, yeah, but that's a little bit hypocritical to agree with that, but then, like, go and wreck, like, 40,000, 50,000-year-old Indigenous site. So, you know, like, I think you need to reflect, Nate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, I might just kind of, like, I'm going to say my last bit and then throw to you to say your last bit. But, you know, thinking about concepts like the Black Lives Matter movement, you know, I'm aware of, you know, certain, you know, basically it was not necessarily embraced full scale as something that the Jewish community showed up to on the street and put their bodies in and on the line. And we do operate in different lanes, but it's worth just reflecting about William Cooper putting his body on the line at a time of great danger and doing so for the Jewish people, and what that kind of legacy and what that action does in a historical context versus right now. Perhaps we need to be a little bit more physically present in the struggle. So that's my own position, and that's not necessarily something that necessarily everyone needs to agree with, but I think social media, that's a great tactic. Donating money, equally important, but putting your body on the line as an ally, that's allyship, that's a complicity, that's standing in solidarity, literally standing in solidarity. And I think we really need to reflect on that and I guess sort of interrogate within our community what prevents us from stepping forward. So that's something that, you know, each individual can take away, you know, on that side. On a side of kind of more covert means of activism, check out who your superannuation fund is investing in. The likelihood is they're investing in Rio Tinto. That means that 10% of your income is going towards exploding 46,000-year-old caves. It's work, and you need to find, like, you need to do the work, but just do it, because every dollar that goes to Rio Tinto and these mining companies is a dollar you are basically paying towards the total obliteration of Indigenous.
We talk with our money.
We talk with our money.
Yeah, we can talk with our money. And there's a organisation called Market Forces, which are really good, and they've done a lot of research on all of the bank superannuation funds and all sorts of different organisations that they do all the research about how ethical things are. And yeah, so you can jump on Market Forces website to have a look at that and, you know, check, is your bank evil or is your bank all right?
Amazing.
Evil is a bit of a stretch, maybe. Maybe not.
Maybe we'll put it together a little list of links, because that sounds like a really awesome
Yeah.
resource for anyone that's to divest in practices that actively destroy Indigenous culture. So that would be dope.
Yeah.
Lastly, you know, I mean, that's my take. I've probably spoken enough, so I'm going to handball over to you for closing remarks.
We both just get so excited and love talking, and when we're together, we're the worst. We just like talk all the talking. You know, but part of what you're saying is, you know, about activism and showing up and putting your bodies on the line. I think that it's probably fair to say, and I know that it's true, as I've heard some, you know, anecdotally, I've heard from multiple non-Indigenous friends of mine about the showing up in their own homes and challenging racism in their own homes, challenging their friends and challenging their colleagues is a really big part of showing up in solidarity and challenging the racism and stopping the racism and breaking it down. And if you want to know more about that specifically and how to be anti-racist, not just not racist, but be anti-racist. So start breaking down the systems that cause oppression and that continue to destroy Indigenous land and you know, all of that stuff that I talk about in my music and in my social media is a friend of mine, Irfan Deliri, has put together an anti-racist training program. So I'll add that in the link as well. And that's amazing. You know, that's even challenging, that's challenging ourselves, even me, because I grew up in the same society that, you know, like I grew up in Bendigo, I grew up, you know, and then about 8 years in Melbourne. And I've been programmed as much as the people around me that, you know, certain things and certain stereotypes, and we all have work to do, whether it's internally in ourselves or whether you're challenging a work colleague and pulling them up and calling it out. And that's really important work as well. And yeah, I think when you can do it from a place of empathy, and that's what I think Jewish people will be really good at, because you've experienced it. You hold it in your blood, you hold it in your DNA, that trauma, just like our mob. And so yeah. I think that you stand in a really good place because you've got the experience and you can say, hey, this is wrong because of this. And if you're not standing up for it, then you're doing yourself and your own communities a disservice.
100%. Bang on. Bang on, Allara. I reckon that's it. I reckon we've said it all. Well, there's been a request for another song. I've got a hands up.
Yeah.
I think we're done. I think we've got to check out.
We got a bit excited about the talking points. But yeah, I've got heaps of stuff. Link in bio. Hashtag link in bio. Scroll down. There's heaps of stuff.
Check out Allara's music.
And keep your eyes out for Rekindled. Hey?
Yeah, you go.
Keep your eyes out for Rekindled Systems, and also big love to the mob out there, whoever's been donating to the Beautiful Sunshine fundraiser as well. Thank you to that. We've got you know, we've got multiple thousands of dollars now, which we're going to use to finish creating this film, which will also help to break down stereotypes and share my story. So big love to all you mob out there, and yeah.
Just quickly, Allara, before you go, before everyone splits, Allara's making a documentary. That's the story. So check out her her link. Yeah, Sunshine.
Link in bio.
Link in bio.
Donate.
Hello. Shabbat shalom. Thank you, Lior. Thank you, Jesse, for inviting us on. Thank you, Sarah, for getting us on this story. Thank you, Abe, for dropping truth for 4 hours yesterday. Thank you, my auntie Barbara.
Yep.
My sister Shirani,
and thank you for everybody. Oh, sorry. You go.
My sister Shirani, who just has such a wealth of knowledge. And thank you, Allara. And you go ahead. You go say your bit. Yeah.
Big thank yous, obviously. Someone who we did mention there, Uncle Boydie, who I didn't get the chance to chat with before this talk, but I really wanted to. So if anyone sees this and gets a chance to talk to him before me, I love him and thank you. big love to Auntie Damien and Uncle Tony Briggs. Big love to my mum, who's always there, you know, a phone call away and supporting me in all the ways through, you know, multiple anxiety attacks a week, is what I've been having lately, which, you know, it is what it is when the world is crumbling down. And big love to, yeah, Abe and Sarah and Kim as well. Kim Moulton, thank you for your input and doing the work that you do. And I'm sorry because I know that I've forgotten multiple incredible people here, but my heart is with you, and I'm incredibly grateful for your work because it helps us all try and make a better place. We want it to be a good world, be free. All I want to do is be free. Go check it out.
All right.
All right. Love yous. Love you and leave ya.
Love you, leave ya. Later, later.
Bye.
Bye.